Hello and welcome to another episode of Yarn to Table. I'm Celeste and this is a show about my knitting life. It's been 2 weeks and I have a lot to show you today. I have, I guess technically 2 finished objects, although one is a pair of socks and one is 2 things that are similar. I also have some works in progress to share with you. One of which is brand new, and I have a very exciting stash enhancement. I'm going to talk a bit about books I've been reading in the chit-chat segment at the end. I've been doing a lot of pleasure reading lately because I am transitioning between semesters, which means that I briefly don't have any assigned reading to do, which is very exciting. And then I also have a lot of announcements that I want to start with, some very exciting announcements about the show. So the first thing that I want to let you know is that I will be hosting a live stream on Saturday, December 30th to celebrate my first podiversary. To say thank you to all of you guys. There's definitely going to be some giveaway action happening. It's going to be a live stream, but anyone who can't make it live will be able to watch the video later, but you'll miss out on the interactive portion and you'll miss out on the giveaway, so I definitely recommend trying to be there live. I have chosen Saturday the 30th as it feels like it's the most likely time there around the holidays and the year end to for more people to be able to make it. And I've chosen 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which I believe is 7 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. You should definitely look it up yourselves and make sure you're converting into your time zone properly, because although 2 p.m. today was 7 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, it's possible that something could be changing that I'm just completely unaware of that makes it different in December. I know that we've already fallen back for daylight savings and they've already fallen back, so I think we should be good and it should be 7 Greenwich Mean Time. But if you want to make sure, just enter 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, December 30th into Google, and you should be able to translate it to your time zone wherever you are. So I really hope you can make it. I'm super excited to get to interact with you guys live, and the core of the episode, in addition to us interacting and having some giveaways, is going to be kind of a year in review. So I'm going to let you know the stats for all of the knitting that I accomplished this year, like how many pairs of socks, that kind of thing. And maybe talk a little bit about my ideas for the upcoming year and your goals for the upcoming year. So that should be a ton of fun and I'm really excited about it. The next thing to announce is also starting up around that time. It's going to be for the new year. I'm going to be doing a year-long knit-along, and I am calling this the Fiber Quest KAL, because the concept is that we're all journeying together through the land of fiber, and I kind of have a like Fellowship of the Ring sort of idea in my mind of like that it's like a quest, and it's going to take a year and we're going to travel through the lands of different fibers as we go and hopefully explore knitting with fibers that we have never knit with before or haven't knit with a lot. It's going to be extremely fun. So it's going to take place over the course of a year, and the way that I've broken it down is that there's a different land of fiber every 2 months. So we're going to have 6 different knit-alongs essentially. Each of those will be 2 months long. It'll be around a certain fiber or fiber type, sort of fiber category, and all you have to do is knit something that's at least 50 grams of yarn that you begin within and end within that 2-month period. Post in the FO thread, and there will be prizes every two months. So I'm going to go ahead and let you know what all the different fibers are now as I'm announcing it. I'm also going to open up a chatter thread, which will have all of that information about it in the Ravelry page. So, of course, as usual, I've gotten ahead of myself. I should mention, if you have not watched before, there is a Ravelry group. The link is in the doobly-doo. You can also find it by searching Yarn to Table on Ravelry. And you can find me, all of my project pages and project notes as Celeste Full on Ravelry. You can also follow along on Instagram. So the group, like most podcast groups, if you watch others, it's got all the good stuff. Introduce yourself thread, ask me anything thread. It's got show notes for every episode, and that's also where KALs and giveaways take place. So I will be opening a chit-chat thread. You can ask any questions you have, start making your plans, start talking to each other, all about FiberQuest, and that's going to have the list of all of the fibers for every month. So when I make weekly reminders about the KAL on the podcast, I'm not going to go through the whole thing every time, of course, but I want to let you know now my plans for what the 6 different lands of fiber are actually going to be. So for January, February, we're going to be traveling in the land of camelids, and a camelid is a group of animal that includes camels, alpacas, and llamas. So you can knit with anything from a camel, an alpaca, or a llama, or a blend. The way I want the fiber thing to work, blends are totally fine. It's okay if you're not knitting 100%. It's just sort of honor system, like be reasonable about it. If something is only, you know, like 5%, that's probably not making the most sense. However, I think 10% is perfectly reasonable for things like cashmere and mohair and silk and stuff like that. When you're talking alpaca, though, I probably would prefer to see something at least 30 to 50%. But I'm not going to have real strict rules about the fiber content. If you have questions, feel free to ask me, but pretty much just like be reasonable about it. Recognize the spirit of the event is about trying those new fibers. And if there's just a tiny, tiny bit of that fiber in your yarn, are you really getting a sense of what it's like to knit with that fiber? Maybe not. So maybe it's not the best for the spirit of the event. You know what I'm saying? But I want everyone to have fun with it. I don't want you to feel like you have to buy insanely expensive yarn if you have more of a budget. And, you know, so for some of the more expensive things like cashmere, like I said, I think 10% is perfectly reasonable. You can still feel the difference. But, you know, if you want to do a 100% cashmere scarf or something, by all means, like, that sounds awesome too, especially if you've already knit with cashmere and you've never knit with 100% cashmere before, because this is all about trying new things, right? So anyway, January, February is camelids, camel, alpaca, llama. March, April is going to be goats. It's the land of goats, and that means cashmere and mohair and any other kind of goat fiber that you might find. But those are the big ones. May, June is going to be cellulose and cellulosic fibers. So these are plant fibers, including like linen and cotton, and hemp, bamboo, soy, but it also includes cellulosic, which are fibers where you take like wood pulp or something, grind it down, and then create fibers from it, which is like rayon. So yeah, anything plant fiber basically. July, August is the land of silk. Silk is its own thing, so strange, not exactly an animal fiber, not exactly a plant fiber. So insanely smooth because it's not a, you know, hair from an animal, and it's not a piece of a plant. It's just this completely, you know, liquid extracted, like magical thing that's just completely its own thing. So I want it to have its own month. It's just all about silk. You can do silk blends, but I want you to feel what it's like to really work with silk. September, October is going to be the wool month, and the thing here is it's anything but merino. Merino is so common. I want you to work with something besides merino. I don't actually want there to be any merino at all in the blend that you're working with, which means you shouldn't just get something that says wool. You should know specifically what breed of wool you're working with. Now again, it can be a blend, but I want it to have at least the name of you know, Blueface Leicester or Targhee, Columbia, right? I want it to have the name of a breed on it. And not have the name merino on there. So it's about experimenting with other types of wool. And then November, December is going to be for those really rare fibers, including things like musk ox, yak, Angora rabbit, bison, beaver, and anything else super unusual that doesn't fit into the other categories. Yeah, so this is going to be really fun. Every month as we get into it, I'll share with you what I'm going to be working on for that month. I can't promise that I'm going to finish all of my objects within time for the finished object thread, but I don't qualify for prizes anyway, so that's okay. But we'll definitely do some talking, probably a little in advance of the beginning of each fiber land, to give you an idea of what to expect from that fiber so that you can have better luck choosing a project that's going to be appropriate. So for example, if you've never worked with alpaca before, you might not realize that alpaca is extremely drapey. And so you might choose it for a sweater that has like, you know, a mock neck and needs to be sort of like more structured and chunky. And that's not going to be a great fit. So because this is about working with new fibers, I don't expect you to already know how to pick the perfect project for your fibers. And that's why we're going to spend some time talking about what to expect out of those fibers before we actually kick off and journey into that land. So I'm insanely excited about this. You may know that I've been just so enamored with learning about different types of fibers since I started reading the Knitter's Book of Yarn, which I'll actually talk about a little more at the end of the episode when I talk about what I've been reading lately. But I read a snippet of that all about wool on the podcast a little while ago. I think it would have been in September. And yeah, so this is just so exciting for me to announce this knit along and say we're gonna all go and do this together. So those are two big exciting upcoming things: the 2018 Fiber Quest KAL and the live stream that's happening on Saturday, December 30th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, before all of that, we're coming up on Thanksgiving here in the US, and so I actually am not going to be recording 2 weeks from now because I record on a Sunday and that's going to be Thanksgiving weekend. So I'm actually taking a bit of a break, a bit of a knitting vacation for myself because I could use it. So instead, I will be recording 3 weeks from today, and that episode will go live on December 4th. So that's when you can expect to see me again, but you will actually see me first on December 1st. We'll probably upload it on the 2nd, because I will also be doing Vlogmas this year, which you may already know. So that's everything to expect coming up. You will see me again at the beginning of December for Vlogmas. Next episode of the podcast will be December 4th. Then we're going to have the live stream on the 30th, and then we're going to have the year-long knit-along. So much exciting stuff coming up. And I think that does it for my many announcements, which means I can start talking about my FOs. First, though, I want to talk about this little elephant in the room that you saw in the intro. This crazy purple-colored, you can see it there, purple-colored potion I'm drinking. This is Magic Potion from David's Tea, which was one of the teas that came in my Haunted Mansion Survival Kit that I got in October. This is actually the first time I've tried it. I was saving it because I really wanted to show it to you guys on the podcast and show you how it changes color. So I kept forgetting to do that, and now I finally remembered. So you probably saw that it poured this crazy blue color, and you might actually be able to see it if I tip my teapot. There you go. So it comes out in this really bright blue color, and then when you add acid from lemon juice, it transforms into a purple color. And I can't really remember exactly the details of why that happens, but it has something to do with pH and something to do with, you know, how like cabbage will do that, like it'll be purple or red or something in like basic water and blue in acidic water or vice versa, and people play around with that with natural dyeing. I don't know anything about what I'm talking about, but you know, I'm speaking around essentially the chemistry that I probably understood when I originally looked it up, but have since completely forgotten because I only have so much room in my brain, and it's mostly mostly stuffed up with lyrics to new wave songs, you know, and useful things like that. So chemistry, not so much. I'm fascinated by chemistry, but I do not have very much education in that department, which means it's difficult when I learn new things for them to actually stick because they don't have a lot of things to tie themselves to. So as much as I'm interested in it, I'm usually not good at remembering it and reporting it later. But anyway, you can look it up if you're curious. And there is a certain kind of flower in here. It's actually, the tea had like the whole blossoms, and they were blue looking and very cool. I can't remember what they're called either, but you can look it up, or else I might pop it up on the screen if I'm being productive. Yeah, and so it was definitely a brighter color than I expected. Like, I thought color changing tea, that's kind of cool, but I didn't expect it would go from a crazy bright blue to a crazy bright purple. So that was actually really fun. It's definitely like very magic potion-y. I think it would be really fun with kids. So, you know, or adult kids like myself. Yeah, so I just had to share that with you guys. I probably seem like I'm endorsed by David's Tea and like I'm some kind of David's Tea commercial all the time because that's how obsessed I am with it, but I'm really not. Okay, so FOs. I think I've teased you enough about FOs. I finished my first pair of Christmas socks. Aren't they so cute? I just love them. So these are made out of a Homespun House Harry Potter Club yarn. And I did the Hermione's Everyday Sock texture. So I'm calling them Hermione's Christmas Day Socks. This is my regular sock recipe with the Fish Lips Kiss heel and the Kitchener toe, except that I did a plain 1x1 rib instead of a twisted 1x1 rib because I really wanted these to look old-fashioned, handmade, kind of have that just like country, yeah, like handmade look to them. That's what the yarn says to me. It says that like they're the kinds of socks that someone would make for you, you know, like in the 19th century or something. I don't know. They probably didn't have socks this vibrant back then, but something about this yarn and this texture just, it screamed that it wanted a more of a handmade country kind of look. And not something as sharp as a twisted 1x1 rib. So that's what I did. I have said before that I think you can see the texture here in contrast to the stockinette. So that'll give you a good idea of it. Just little pearl bumps. And I have said before, but I will mention again, that I don't think variegated is the best way to show off this texture. But I do think this texture is a good way to show off variegated yarn, if that makes any sense at all. So I am very pleased with this. I don't think the texture necessarily gets lost. It's more like the texture could be better shown off in like a tonal or a subtle speckle, but at the same time, I think the texture does something very interesting to sort of break up the variegation. And so I do actually really like this combination. It's just that it also makes me want to do this texture again with like a tonal or maybe even a subtle speckle. Yeah, so I don't think I have much to say about these. I may have mentioned before, I think this was the first time that I really properly, or maybe it was my Halloween socks that was the first time. Anyway, recently I've sort of properly done the boomerang rows to where I don't have so much of a little gap here in the Fish Lips Kiss heel, which is a problem a lot of people have. And it came down to me strangling the stitches properly on the boomerang rows typically when I try to strangle stitches to prevent laddering, like at the beginning of a magic loop row, I will knit 1 or 2 stitches and then I'll tug. And that's the best thing for that. But because you're not going in the round, you're going back and forth with the Fish Lips Kiss, you really need to give it the tug immediately. And now that I've been doing that, it really, really helps to prevent that getting gaps there. So that would be a piece of advice I would give. I know that's a problem a lot of people have with this heel. The other problem people have with this heel is that it doesn't fit their foot very well, but I actually have insanely narrow heels, so this fits me perfectly. I have to put liners into the backs of a lot of my shoes, and I had to sew my point ribbons completely differently when I was dancing, and just shoes and socks and nothing ever wants to stay on my heel at all. So these heels that are way too small for a lot of people actually end up fitting me perfectly. And actually this heel fits my husband really well also, which is convenient because it means I can just do it for both of us, and it's a really nice heel to knit. So that works out well. Anyway, I don't think I have much else to say about these. I'm really excited to start wearing them. I've kept them fresh for you guys. And now I want to start wearing them. I am just really excited about Christmas. I love Christmas. I love Christmas so much. So I love winter. I love snow. I love evergreens. I just love everything about Christmas. And it's kind of silly because, like, I know a lot of people find it cheesy, and I understand that. And typically I would be one of those people, but like I don't celebrate like Sweetest Day. You know what I mean? Like I am a big holiday person. I like holidays, but I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, maybe it's not cool to like love Christmas. And also it's a little weird, I guess, because I'm not Christian. I was not raised Christian, and I'm not Christian now, but I love Christmas. I was raised with Christmas, just like secular Christmas. Anyway, I'm really excited about Christmas. I sincerely feel like emotionally moved by the idea of just like there being this time of year when people sort of just try harder to be kind and generous. And I know that maybe sounds fake to some people. Like, some people are probably more cynical and think that people don't actually do that, or that it brings out the worst in us because we just get really materialistic. And I do agree that, like, Black Friday shopping is out of control, and all of that disgusts me, to be honest. This year my family isn't even giving gifts. There's going to be gifts for the children. My husband and I are going to exchange gifts with each other, but the whole just like pressure of like materialism and stuff, I don't like that. And I can see how it might be easy to like not be able to see past that. But honestly, I do feel like I become more conscious and compassionate and generous during the Christmas season. I am more likely to just go out of my way to help other people out, and just to be more forgiving and to assume the best of people. I just feel that come over me, and it feels like the kind of thing that it's not sustainable to just have that turned on all the time. But the fact that once a year you're sort of like, well, this is the season of this. Like, this season we're going to try our hardest to just be the best we can be toward each other. There's just something really special about it. I don't know, I probably sound crazy, but anyway, I love Christmas. And where I was going with this was, I've been just like on this kick. I guess Amy Florence started it, of Stranded Dye Works and the Stranded podcast, but she's trying to knit herself like 25 Christmas socks, over the course of a few years. And suddenly I just was like, yeah, I want like a lot of Christmas socks. Like, I don't just want to make one pair a year. I want to make a few pair a year, and I want to have just like a bunch of Christmas socks. And I still don't know if I want to pack them away when it's not Christmas and only wear them at Christmas time, and kind of have them be more special that way, or if I just want to have a bunch of Christmas socks and I wear them whenever. I guess I'll figure that out. But yeah, so I had several kinds of Christmas yarn, and instead of just choosing one and saying these are my Christmas socks, I'm just gonna knit up as many pair as I can over the course of the season. It's just gonna be all Christmas socks. I always have socks on the go, and they're just all gonna be Christmas socks until we get to Christmas. And then I'm gonna switch over and knit another pair of socks for Ryan, because he actually absolutely adores his socks that I made him. He wears them almost every day when we're sitting around the house, and he just loves them. And so that makes me want to knit him more really badly, even though his feet are bigger than mine. I'm lucky though, his feet are smaller than some people's husbands and brothers and stuff, so it could be worse. But yeah, so I'm going to knit myself a bunch of Christmas socks, and then probably when I go to Cambridge and I need mindless knitting for residency, I will knit him some socks, and maybe myself some other socks. Or maybe I'll knit him a couple pair of socks. I don't know. Last residency, I knit two pairs of socks over the course of it. Okay, so the other finished object, or finished objects, is Santa hats. I told you I love Christmas. So you were warned that I was going to make giant Santa hats. I did mention that on the podcast. But I hope that the impact of these insane Santa hats is not lessened at all by the fact that you were kind of expecting them, because these make an impact. Like, they're big, they're chunky, they're red. Christmas hats. Okay, let me explain. So, a while ago, I was trying to get rid of some super bulky yarn, and so I bought more super bulky yarn so that I could knit it in a project. Then I just ended up with more super bulky yarn. Then I bought a bunch of red super bulky yarn, but it turned out that was the wrong gauge for what I thought I was going to use it for, so then I made my big red sweater, and then I had some left over, and I thought, Christmas hats. But I also thought I wanted to make white or cream colored super bulky stockings. So I went and I bought a bunch more super bulky yarn. So I am definitely in a position where, as I try to knit through my super bulky yarn, I just end up with more super bulky yarn every single time. And I am in that position right now. I have an entire drawer full that I'm going to use for the Christmas stockings. Those are to come. But I did manage to get rid of all of the red, like perfectly. So, I mean, that's an accomplishment. Also, we now have these awesome hats. So let me tell you about them. This is the first one, and if you can tell, it's actually larger, and it does not decrease as quickly. I'll show you the difference between them when they're on. So this one wears like very, very big and chunky, and this one wears a little bit more fitted and a little bit pointier. So I knit this one first. Also, they both stand up on their own, like on a flat surface. They just stand, which is really cool. So anyway, I knit this one Friday night. Each of them took me like an hour. And I put it on when Ryan came home, and he loved it. And he was like, make me one, make me one. So today, it's Sunday, this morning, I made a second one. This one actually needs to be mine because it's a little small for his head. I was worried I wasn't going to have enough red yarn to make another one this size. So I made the base of it 4 stitches smaller. This is 28 stitches. This was 24 stitches. In order to do the 2x2 rib, it needed to be increments of 4. And this one is like a little big. Like, it can easily do this. So I thought making it a little smaller, it might actually fit me better. But what I ended up with is one that is so small that it doesn't fit Ryan very well at all. So this one's pretty much mine, and the bigger one is his. I like to kind of style it, yeah, like that. So I'm gonna say, okay, so I knit this one first. I did a 2x2 rib for, I don't know, like 12 maybe rows. So I could roll it up. I just kept rolling it until it looked how I wanted it to look. Then I knit red stockinette to about here, and then I started decreasing 4 decreases around in every round. About every 2 rows. At a certain point, I started lengthening it a little bit because I didn't want it to be too short. I really just, you know, was making it up as I went along. And then I did the little pom-pom. This one, I started with, gosh, I am just destroying my hair. Okay. This one I started with 24 stitches. I did the same 2x2, although you can tell I didn't do quite as much of it. And then I started decreasing at about the same place, but I think I decreased faster. Or no, I mean I decreased slower. So it ended up being kind of longer and pointier. And I wasn't actually looking at this one when I made this one. I just left it upstairs, and I don't know. I knew they weren't going to match exactly anyway, so I just kind of let myself make it up again based on the amount of yarn I had. And I ended up using almost exactly all the red. And yeah, I think they're really, really fun. I want to wear it on the podcast through December, like I wore my witch hat through October. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And yeah, now we have our little matching hats that we can wear throughout the Christmas season, which is just exactly the kind of like goofy thing that we like to do. So, Santa hats. These are, I don't think I mentioned, these are out of Knit Picks Tough Puff, which is super bulky one strand, super bulky single ply, but I actually doubled it because without being doubled, it's suggested that you use like a US 15 needle. I had a 10 and a half and I had a 19, so I didn't have anywhere near a 15. My 19 size needle, I had 2 circular ones, and one was exactly the right size to do the base of the hat, and then the other one was long enough that I could do magic loop once I decreased. So I really wanted to knit them using those size 19 needles. So I just doubled it over so that I would get like a really, really dense weave, which I wanted, and that's part of why they just stand up so perfectly. Yeah. So super bulky doubled gets you like a crazy big gauge, and that is exactly what I was looking for. And I also think this is the gauge I'm going to do for the Christmas stockings. So, yep, that's my plan. Okay, the next whip I want to show you is my new pair of socks that I have going in my beautiful Home Row Fiber Company bag. And these are my next pair of Christmas socks. And they are out of the self-striping Jinx on the super sock base, strong sock base in Gingerbread House. And I've just barely started it. I'm doing contrasting heels, toes, and cuffs in Knit Pick Stroll in Dogwood Heather, which is the color just about everyone uses to contrast with this. As you can see, it's pretty much perfect. And I already had some in my stash. So I can't say enough about how beautiful this yarn is. The pink is very speckled, but the brown is like, I didn't expect the brown to be so tonal. Like, it just has so much depth of color. It's really, really special. It almost reminds me of the Malabrigo yarn I knit my Void out of, which was a beautiful brown tonal with a ton of different colors in there and oranges and rusts and stuff, called Glitter. So it kind of reminds me of that. Yeah, so I'm excited about these. I've figured out exactly like how many stripes I want to have on the, how many stripes I need to have on the foot and where they're gonna fall and where the heel's gonna fall and everything. I like to plan that stuff out in advance. So I know that I'm gonna do another repeat of this, and then I'm gonna do another brown stripe, have the pink heel placed between the brown and the white because I don't want it to be touching the pink. And then from there I'll be starting with the white onto the foot, and the way that the stripes work out, you would have another pink row just before the decreases for the toe. So instead of that, when I get to it, I'm going to swap for the solid pink and do that for as long as the stripe would be, and then into the decreases, so that again, the pink will never touch the pink, and it'll be exactly where you expect it to be before the brown at the top and after the white at the bottom. And then having the heel be between the brown and the white. So that's the kind of thing where I know some people don't care about details and stuff like that with stripes, but for me, I really get a lot of pleasure out of like planning things so that they work out perfectly like that. I really like everything to be extremely precise. And yeah, so I'm excited. I am quite excited about these. And I'm sure I'll talk much more about them. We'll have plenty of other times to chat. But I gotta get going because with all those announcements, I feel like I have a lot to get through now. I have another pair of socks to just check in on. These are in my Gilmore Girls patchwork bag I made. And these are the socks that I work on only when I'm recording Return to Stars Hollow as a little treat for myself. So the first one is finished. These are a 3x1 rib, and they're out of a Homespun House Gilmore Girls club in the Pop-Tart Dilemma and Coffee, Coffee, Coffee. And they have this really, really cute progress keeper that comes with them. They're just such a treat. So I only work on these if we're recording, and we're actually on break right now because my co-host is getting married. But we did have a recording session since I saw you last, and during that recording session, I think I hadn't even done the heel yet. So during that, I turned the heel, or did the heel flap, turned the heel, and I believe I completed the gusset. So now I should be close to finishing these. We are going to be back on the week of Thanksgiving, and then straight ahead almost until Christmas. So they should get finished sometime soon. Which is good because once they're finished, I will know if I have enough of the Coffee, Coffee, Coffee to use it in the heels of another pair of Christmas socks that I want to make. But I need to finish this sock before I get to the heel portion of those socks. Of course, I won't even be starting those socks until after I finish the gingerbread house. So you can tell what a planner I am. These are the kinds of thoughts that I have. I'm always several socks ahead in my brain. So anyway, just checking in on those. I've shown them many times before, so I don't want to bore you all with them. Another thing you've seen many, many times before is my Cozy Memories quilt, but I actually did add a few squares onto it since I saw you, so I thought I would just show you the squares. This is it, and if you don't know, my concept with this is I like these squares to reflect, for the most part, except in rare circumstances with very special yarn, I like for the squares to reflect actual projects that I have done to be tied to specific memories. So I started this earlier this year, and here it is. It's 4 squares wide in some places and 3 squares wide in the other, and the entire thing is 15 squares across, and the squares are about 3 inches across. So that should give you an idea of it overall. And then, since you've last seen it, I added the shiner square for my pavement pullover. This is a colorway by Stranded Dye Works. And then I came down here where I had already started and I put in some squares from my most recent socks. So this is the Candy Apple sock set here from Nora George. And then here are my Halloween socks. I did them in Jinx Yarns Strong Sock in the Jack and Sally colorway, which is self-striping. And I did contrasting heels, toes, and cuffs in Knit Pick Stroll in Pumpkin. So yeah, you can kind of get an idea there of how I like to sort of actually remember the specific projects with this quilt. I really love how every so often, you know, I take a break from my regular projects and I go in and add some squares to this because it just makes for a nice way to like break up the routine knitting. And in that way, I never really get tired of the quilt because I only work on it every so often when I have projects that I need to add to it. Yarn from projects. So there's that. And then my final whip is in my Hanalisa bag. I've actually gone and added this adorable little dirigible plum progress keeper that I knitted. I just thought it was so cute. It needed to have a home where I would see it all the time. And I thought it looked good with this bag. So I added that today actually. And then this is where my pavement is living. I've been getting a little bit, I wouldn't say tired of it. I haven't been knitting on it as much as I would like, simply because with alternating skeins, taking it out and putting it in the project bag and keeping the skeins separate and knitting on them, you know, it's just become a bit more of a production than it would be if I only had one skein, I guess, which is why I don't knit socks 2 at a time. I mean, it's just why that's not my jam. So last time I mentioned, you know, how alternating skeins wasn't bothering me as much as I thought it would be. And it's not so much that it's bothering me, it's just I don't pull this out just to knit a couple rows because of the hassle of like keeping the skeins separate and untangling them. Well, not untangling them, but just making sure they don't tangle. That hassle is enough that I pretty much only knit on it when I know I'm going to be sitting there for at least half an hour. Which means that I often just end up knitting on like my sock or something, which is technically breaking the rules because that's meant to be my on-the-go project. But sometimes I have found myself just not bothering getting this out, and I'll knit on the sock and I'll sit there and watch like a whole podcast. And I really should be knitting on this instead. So anyway, I have, however, made a lot of progress and I'm almost done with the main body portion. So here it is, upside down. Here are the sleeves, right? From the sleeve, I've done this much. This teacup is at the 100 round mark, 100 rounds from the sleeves. And I think I've knit about 110, and I need to knit 120 before I can start short row shaping at the bottom, as it has sort of a split hem effect. So I'm definitely almost through the woods on the body of this, and I just need to devote a little bit more time to it, and I should be there. I'm very excited to wear it. I really, really am. And I'm not, it's not that it's become a chore to knit on it. It's just, yeah, like I said, it's just a bit more of a production. And I haven't been making as much time for it as I could. So hopefully I will do that soon. And I have another sweater on the needles, which you haven't seen in a while, the Ebba. And that's because I just feel like I want to get somewhere with this one. But ideally, I will be able to finish both of them by the time I go to Cambridge, and I can wear both of them there. January is the coldest month in that part of Massachusetts. So I want to have lots of hand knits with me. I know this isn't a particularly heavyweight sweater, but you know, it's layers and all that. And the other one's going to be quite warm, I think, even though it's just a sport weight. It is, I think it might be 100% wool, I can't remember, but it is knit at a very tight gauge, and the yoke is completely stranded, so that makes it double thick. So that's going to be a very warm sweater. I really want to have that with me in Cambridge, so we'll see. We'll see if I can accomplish that. So that brings me to the end of WIBs, and I just want to touch on what I'm planning on knitting next before I show you my stash enhancement, and then we can chat about reading. So as I mentioned, I want to do those chunky Christmas Christmas stockings. That's going to be sometime soon. And in Ryan's gift, the Spirit of the Birch scarf, which I still haven't started. I need to test. So the yarn that I bought for it, I scared myself at one point. I thought I had accidentally bought superwash, which isn't going to work because it needs to felt. And I think that I just logged it wrong in Ravelry and that I didn't actually buy the wrong thing. But now I've got myself so spooked that I want to cut a little bit of the yarn and try to felt it just to prove to myself that it felts. So I just need to do that before I actually start knitting on it. The other thing is, it's something that I need to knit when Ryan's not around, which it's not very hard to find those moments since he works an opposite shift from me. Oh, look at that. That's so cool. How it pours blue, but it's purple in the glass. Anyway, I think I might dedicate some time to his present around Thanksgiving weekend, because he's off that week, but he's working over the weekend, and I want to really do a lot of knitting that weekend and relaxing, so I want to at least have cast that on by then. And then in Christmas, in December, I have ordered, it hasn't come yet, but I've ordered an advent calendar from a homespun house, and I would like to make myself some advent socks. So I would do striped socks with a stripe for every day. The cuff, actually day one would be the cuff, and then I would do a stripe for each day. The heel would be a day, and a stripe for each day, and the toe would be the 24th. So that's something that I'm excited about. I've actually already worked out the map so that I can knit them cuff down, which is what I like, and still have it work out perfectly with the stripes and everything. So that's exciting. And then another thing is, I just lately have been wanting to make myself some simple house slippers. With the pattern I did last year as a gift, and they're just really, really lovely, quick knit, just nice little fitted house slippers. And I don't know, lately I'm just wanting to. So I knit them out of DK last year, and I have a lot of fingering in my stash, so I think I'm going to double some fingering and knit myself some of those sometime soon, just to kind of mix it up, have a small project going, and mostly because I'd really like a pair for myself. So that's kind of the stuff that's coming up that I haven't already mentioned. So that brings us to stash enhancement. Yep. So I got a sweater's quantity of Wool & Vine. I'm really excited about it. Smells good too. So I love Wool & Vine, and I've never bought yarn before. I didn't want to just buy random skeins. I wanted to buy something for a garment. And so I did some thinking. I planned it all out while she was not doing updates, because she was doing Indie Untangled back at Rhinebeck Week. And I looked at all her colorways, I decided what base I wanted, and I decided a couple colorways that could work to make myself a tegna, which is a really lovely, more of a t-shirt than a sweater. It's like a short sleeve, thin, lacy kind of top. And there were a few colorways that I could see loving it in. I Am No Bird was one, Gashly Crumb, Black Pearl, and then my first favorite colorway of hers ever, Dirty on Purpose. This was the first colorway of hers that I saw on her podcast, and I really loved it. So that is what I ended up getting. And see here, it's on her footsie base, which is Blueface Leicester. And it's just got these incredible, beautiful speckles through it. Grays and browns with almost rusts and green, olivey greens in there. Just a really, really special, neutral but exciting colorway. Just exactly the kind of thing that I would like to make a garment out of. So I'm really excited about that. As excited as I am to cast it on, I don't think I'm going to be casting this on until later in the winter, because I want to, for things that I can actually finish before winter's over, I want to prioritize winter garments. And I will not be starting this until, you know, I can finish it and then be wearing it in the spring when I wouldn't be wearing my heavier garments, or at least long sleeve garments, like in the case of the pavement. So yeah, that's my plan. I find that what I end up doing is I always get like in the mood for a certain type of garment when it's too late to actually finish it in time to wear it. Like right now is technically when I should be finishing my heaviest weight sweaters, but instead I'm still trying to finish up the sweaters that I started with fall in mind. And then by the time I want to start my heavier weight sweaters, I'm not going to finish them until it's spring. So I need to get better at that. Because I'm a new garment knitter, I don't think I'm super good at planning that way, but I do know that I shouldn't cast these on now, because to the extent that I have any time left at all to cast on and then finish winter sweaters, I should not be wasting time with lightweight things like this. So what I want to do is I want to finish the pavement and the Ebba, and then hopefully I will finish those by the new year. And then I'm just going to put all of my sweater knitting time in on like one heavyweight garment, probably something that I won't actually finish during the winter, but at least get a big chunk in on it. You know, once it gets to be closer to the end of winter, I can switch over and start doing spring garments. So, for what it's worth. Okay, so that brings me to the chit-chat segment. If you are not sticking around, I just want to say thanks for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't yet, and hit that thumbs up button if you did enjoy the episode, as that helps other people find me, so I really appreciate it. And let's move along to chit-chat. So today I just want to talk about what I've been reading lately. As I mentioned, I don't have a ton of assigned readings, so I have really gone crazy lately. I have, just in the last week or so, I have listened to 3 different audiobooks, and then I've finished a few hardcover books, and I've started some more. So I'm not going to mention every single thing that I've read, but I want to mention a few of them. So first, I'm in a mood for like very, what's the word I want to say? Like frothy, just frothy, joyous reads. Things that aren't too dense, things that aren't going to be too challenging. I'm really exhausted from schoolwork, and I really want to just have just pure joy reads. So I've been on a bit of a, like, I guess, thriller or suspense kick, well, some of them are suspense. One of them is a mystery. So with audiobooks, I have recently listened to The Talented Mr. Ripley by Patricia Highsmith, Her Royal Spyness by Reese Bowen, and Dare Me by Megan Abbott. So The Talented Mr. Ripley is a classic work of suspense. Patricia Highsmith, if you don't know, she wrote The Price of Salt, which was recently adapted into the movie Carol, filmed here in Cincinnati, because our downtown looks like New York in the 1950s, so they like to film stuff here that takes place in New York in the 1950s. And she also wrote Strangers on a Train, which was adapted into a Hitchcock movie, and recently I believe they're doing a new adaptation, or maybe it's already come out. And The Talented Mr. Ripley was actually adapted in the late 90s into a very popular film starring Matt Damon, Jude Law, Gwyneth Paltrow, Cate Blanchett, and the incredible late great Philip Seymour Hoffman. Which I actually just watched for the first time after I finished the book. It definitely takes some liberties, but it's a good film. I love Matt Damon. I love all of those actors. So anyway, where was I going with this? So yeah, so I wanted to listen to that. I'd wanted to read that for a while because it's told from Tom Ripley's point of view, and he is a liar and a manipulator, and some people might say a psychopath. And I love reading a story that is told from the point of view of the bad behavior because you kind of get inside their head, and I just find that really, really fascinating. One of my favorite books of all time, and also definitely recommend it as an audiobook because the narrator is perfect, is a book called You. And it's like this guy who is basically a stalker and psychopath, and from his point of view he's like very reasonable, and it's just like obviously disturbing but like fascinating to listen to. Anyway, so I listened to that. Her Royal Spyness by Reese Bowen is the first in a mystery series, just very, very light, effervescent, fun, rollicking goodness. It takes place in London in the 1930s. The main character is a sort of, she is a member of the royal family, but she's like 34th in line to the throne. So basically her father was like one of Victoria's youngest kids, like children or whatever. And it's cool because it has, you know, the future King Edward and Wallis Simpson make appearances, as well as his mother, the current queen. And there's reference to Elizabeth, King George's wife, and I can't remember if she mentions King George at any point, but I'm sure that they will become characters later in the series as well. So it's got like real people. If you know anything about the royal family at the time, you know that like some crazy stuff is about to go down. So essentially part of the story is like the queen wants her to spy on David, who is the future King Edward, to kind of see like what's going on with him and that American woman. And if you know history, you know that once he ascends to the throne when his father dies, he actually ends up abdicating very soon after because he wants to marry her, and the people don't want him to marry her because she's a divorcee. So then after he advocates, his younger brother Albert becomes King George. He was the stuttering king and the main character in The King's Speech, which is a wonderful movie. And yeah, so it's got these like real characters, and you know, if you know anything about history, you sort of like see things that are on the horizon. But the main story is just about her trying to make her way in London. She doesn't have any money. Her mother was like an actress and like lower class, you know, so she spends some time with like her maternal grandfather, who's like a Cockney and everything, and she mixes between these two worlds, and she's trying to make her own way of it. And so she's like trying to become employed running a cleaning service, but she's actually doing all the cleaning herself, and she can't let people know that because nobility isn't supposed to behave that way, even though she really needs to make money. And then there's like a romance aspect, and there's a murder mystery, which is at the center of it. So as I said, it's the first in a series. It's really, you know, well written. I mean, it's not like literary fiction. It's fun. It's just joyous and, you know, cheeky and really smart, and just really fun. I just zoomed through it. It was hilarious, and the mystery was like, it was right at the level. Some people will probably say it was like way too easy to solve, but I don't read a lot of mysteries, so for me, it's nice when there's a mystery that's kind of easy because I actually can get anywhere near figuring it out, because that's just not my forte. But anyway, the other audiobook was Dare Me by Megan Abbott. It was good. It was not my favorite of hers. So the first thing I read by her was The Fever, which came out in 2014, I think. And that, she writes these sort of suspense novels that are about like teen girls and just sort of like the dark underbelly of that world. So the first one was like these girls were having these like fits, and people didn't know if it was like psychosomatic or if they had been poisoned or like what was going on, and that was sort of the central mystery. And then last year she had a new book come out that I read. I'm trying to remember what it was called. Anyway, it took place in the world of competitive gymnastics, and I listened to it as like during the time when the Olympics was going on, and I was watching a lot of gymnastics. That was really interesting. And it also had like a mystery at the center of it. So they're mysteries, but they're not like detective novels. Like Her Royal Spyness is sort of a detective novel, because even though she's not a detective, she's sort of trying to solve the case. Whereas these like have a mystery, but it's more of a suspense, I guess. And they're darker. And so then this recently I listened to Dare Me, which takes place in a cheer squad, and there's there's a suicide, and then it becomes like a possible murder mystery, and it was not her first book, but her first of these kinds of books. So she was writing a lot of like historical fiction and stuff. She's actually now a staff writer on the TV show The Deuce, which is interesting. But anyway, this was her first, I think it came out in 2012, and it was her first of like this new type of sort of like teen girl thriller thing that she's been writing. I guess they're young adult novels technically. And so I had read the more recent two, and I thought this one was definitely not as good as those. I would recommend The Fever, #1, but the gymnastics one was good too. This one I liked, but I definitely felt like you could tell that she's improved and come into like writing this type of story with a bit more nuance and a bit better character development. And she has a new one coming out next year, so that's exciting. But anyway, I still liked it. So that's all the audiobook stuff, and then I want to show you some hardbacks. First of all, I just want to mention that I did finish this, and I would like to do a full review of it, either as a separate video or possibly as the chit-chat segment of a future podcast. So look forward to that. The Cliff's Notes version is, I absolutely recommend this to every single person who loves yarn. It was incredible. So I want to talk more about that. Stay tuned. But I did finish it finally. I had picked it up back in September, and because I was still reading a lot for school, I just wasn't able to go at very fast of a pace. And then I just finished this, which is fun. It's an adaptation to graphic novel form that Marvel did of Sense and Sensibility. Apparently they also did Pride and Prejudice, Northanger Abbey, and Emma. So I want to check those out too. I wish they'd do Persuasion. I don't really care if they do Mansfield Park or not, because I hate Mansfield Park. Well, I mean, I don't hate it. It's Austin, but you know what I'm saying. I do kind of hate it. I don't like Mansfield Park. Whatever. I don't hate it. I don't like it. Whatever. I don't need to rant on and on about Austin. But what I'm getting at is it's got really great art and it's extremely faithfully adapted. Lots of good dialogue from the book itself. And I just really liked the way it was done. So here's Lucy. Yeah. So anyway, read that. And then right now I'm reading Ingredient by Ali Buzari, which is really, really, really interesting. The concept here is that he breaks down all of what happens in the kitchen into capital I ingredients, which are water, carbohydrates, sugars, lipids, proteins, gases, minerals, and heat. And then he sort of talks about what's actually happening, the chemistry behind how these different ingredients affect what happens in the kitchen. So like for the water chapter, every chapter is beautifully illustrated and uses a different medium. So the water chapter was done in watercolor, right? The lipids chapter is done in oil paint, etc. So it sets up like water and it says, okay, here are 5 things water does. It's a solid, liquid, or gas. It dissolves things. It flows. It is acidic, neutral, or basic. It makes things grow. And there's going to be a little bit talking about all of those things. So like here, where it talks about solid, liquid, or gas, they have these amazing spreads of photographs of food. And it talks about what that really means. So like water expands as steam, puffing, and leavening. And it shows you this croissant and popcorn. When bitten, liquid water is released to make things juicy. Lettuce and steak. Okay? And then solid water crystals make things firm. And you have frozen salmon and popsicles. So it's got stuff like that. Of course, it also goes more in detail about this kind of stuff, and just really beautiful illustrations and these cool photography pages. It's just a joy to read. I would say, so for me, I don't find this to be a helpful guide in terms of like knowing how to take advantage of these things in the kitchen. Like that's sort of how the marketing sells this book. Like it's going to help you cook. Possibly if you don't already know that much about cooking, this will help you cook. For me, it explains phenomena that I already know about, I already understand on an instinctive level, but it helps me understand like the actual science behind why those expected outcomes are what they are. So I think it could probably go in either direction. If you know about science and you don't know about cooking, you'd probably enjoy this. And if you know about cooking, but you don't know that much about science, you would probably enjoy it. And honestly, if you know about both, you'd probably still enjoy it. You just wouldn't necessarily learn as much. But yeah, anyway, I'm making my way through that. I have my Books by the Banks bookmark. And yeah, so anyway, that's what I've got to share with you guys. I'm going to let you go now. I hope that you have a lovely, lovely, lovely Thanksgiving if you celebrate it. If not, I hope you just enjoy the rest of November. Hope the weather is lovely wherever you are, and that you get to spend plenty of time with family and with your yarn and anything else that makes you happy. And I will see you in December.